top. And now on to national and international news. Russia warned yesterday that U.S. fighter jets are now a potential target if they fly west of the Euphrates River. The announcement came a day after the U.S. shot down a Syrian fighter jet, with Pentagon officials claiming that the fighter jet attacked U.S.-backed troops. Syria says that the fighter jet was being used to battle ISIS militants. Russia's deputy foreign minister said that the U.S. strike was a continuation of America's disregard for the norms of international law. They also said that they would suspend its communications channel with U.S. forces, which is used to prevent collisions and dangerous incidents in Syrian airspace. But U.S. General Joseph Dunford said that a hotline established 8 months ago between U.S. Central Command and its Russian equivalent would remain open. And where does this hotline operate from? Qatar, who our president spent last week bashing for being a supporter of Islamic terrorism. Russia has already threatened to shut down the hotline in April after Trump ordered an airstrike against an Air Force base that was allegedly involved in chemical weapons. Then we heard nothing more about it. UK Prime Minister Theresa May urged Russia not to shut down communications between the two countries, saying that would risk an air fight accidentally breaking out. So in a nutshell, the military operation in Syria is running like a well-oiled death machine. Now, another day, another police shooting. This time, Seattle police shot 30-year-old Charlena Lyles after she called the police to report a break-in. Police say that she was carrying a knife when they arrived and that the shooting was in self-defense. 2 officers initially showed up at the scene after Charlena called the police, which is unusual because only 1 officer would normally respond to a burglary. After shooting Lyles, 2 other officers showed up at the house and pronounced her dead. The department released a 4-minute recording that reportedly captures officers saying, "We need help," and "Get back, get back." Lyles was pregnant and lost a child in the shooting. She also has 3 children, ages 1, 4, and 11, one of whom has Down syndrome. Lyles' cousin, who helped take care of the children, said that her children are having a hard time understanding what happened. Relatives say that Lyles suffered from mental challenges which could have led to the shooting. Studies repeatedly show that people with mental illnesses and disabilities are 16 times more likely to get killed by police, along with other studies showing that African Americans are at a higher risk of being killed by police. Seattle Mayor Ed Murray said that the shooting was a tragedy for all involved and the incident would be fully investigated. Hopefully, the investigation would lead to officers learning to fire a warning shot in the air instead of going for the kill on a pregnant woman. A data analytics contractor hired by the Republican Party left databases open that contained information about almost 200 million voters. As of early Monday morning, the database was available to anyone who had a URL and contained 25 terabytes of files held in an Amazon cloud account. The contractor Deeproot Analytics apologized for the release, which was discovered by researcher Chris Vickery. His research involves uncovering improperly secured files online, and he says that this was the
at least several hundred currently attending state universities and unknown number attending community colleges across the state. So just a couple of figures so we can get a better picture of what we're talking about. So a current community college student taking a full-time course would see tuition go from $2,580 a year to over $8,900. That is a huge increase.
Yeah, and that's just for community college where we assume most of the students are at this moment, so much larger number than just hundreds. At ASU, in-state tuition would go from $10,370 to $26,470. That's not including any books, any supplies, any room and board. And also and even at a more extreme level, University of Arizona here in Tucson, in-state would go from $12,817 to $36,017 for 1 year of tuition alone. That is not any room and board, that's not parking, that's not food, that is not even books. $36,000.
So apart from tuition, all of this, there's a bunch of other expenses that are not taken into account.
And considering that most of us immigrant students come from low-income working families, this type of tuition increases is going to be very difficult to overcome.
Detrimental. And in Maricopa County, for example, which is the largest community college, the largest district in the state with a community college, enrollment dropped by more than 10,000 students when the district implemented the state rules on legal statutes required by the Proposition 300. And again, we have to remind ourselves that Judge Kenton D. Jones was appointed by Arizona Governor Jan Brewer.
How not surprising at all, the evil witch that just keeps on giving. And it is also important to note that he gets paid $150,000 per year. And he is in his seat until 2023. So clearly, we're talking bipartisan politics all over again, which will destroy, if this is allowed to stay, will destroy really the lives and the hopes of a lot of our friends,
young men,
and family. If you disagree with this decision, there's not much to do except annoy the hell out of the judge, which I hope you do. I urge you to. You can call his office at 602-542-4821 and just bother him. Now let's discuss a little bit the effects that the DACA program has had on its recipients and why it's such an important program. In 2015, a nationwide survey conducted by Topline found that DACA has greatly improved the lives of its recipients. Statistics show that recipients saw an average of 45% in hourly wage increase as they gained lawful work authorization and were able to get jobs that better match their skills and training. This, of course, led to more investment in higher education. Following this national survey, the National Immigration Law Center analyzed the economic and educational outcome following the implementation of DACA, and the results were quite impressive. According to this survey, 96% of DACA recipients are either employed or in school. You can actually probably compare this to normal groups in the country, and they're far above. 92% of those in school are pursuing education opportunities previously not available to them. This is in direct relation, I'm sure, to in-state tuition. 69% got a job with better pay, 89% got a driver's license, 21% bought their first car, adding greatly to the GDP of each state. 54% found a job with better working conditions. Pre-DACA average hourly wage stood at $11.97, and it now sits at an average of $17.29. Overall, respondents are currently in school, and overall, the respondents that are currently in school, 70% of them are also working. The majority are pursuing undergraduate degrees, with 17% pursuing advanced degrees. This is why in-state tuition for documented students is so important. Most immigrant families, as I mentioned, are working class, and a yearly tuition of $36,000 is almost impossible, if not just downright impossible, for these families to pay. They can't afford it. And it's also important to remember that documented students are also not eligible for state or federal student aid, for none.
This is crazy. And just to add one more point before we move on to the next topic, although Donald Trump, right, and his administration recently decided to keep DACA as an executive action, we can see how states now are moving forward, like Arizona, in eliminating some of the benefits that DACA provides. And this calls for the need for DACA students
them raiding the actual camp. And myself, I asked the Border Patrol guy that was there if there was any internal policy to be lenient in these areas, such as watering holes and medical camps, during such hot weather. And of course he ran around the subject and then continued to jump on the fact that they save more lives and this is what they do, and they truly actually believe that what they're doing out there is kind of hero work. But it's just interesting and it's odd, because I read what humanitarian groups, I mean, we look at what humanitarian aid groups, where they operate, and it's always in conflict zones, right? It's never under completely legal terms. Not everybody's ever 100%. Now, one of the things for international law, one of the requirements was that there be danger of military action and
well, they
weapons.
don't want to recognize the humanitarian crisis, that is the immigration and people crossing the border that
That's
are dying.
right. So they are in crisis. People in Mexico are in crisis. It is the second deadliest conflict zone aside from Syria, okay? So under international law, if they were to just recognize that Mexico is in a crisis, we have a refugee crisis and they are running from death. If they were to just recognize that, then them doing what they just did on Thursday would actually fall under them breaking international law for humanitarian aid. It's just interesting how the imperial powers pick and choose what is a conflict zone and what isn't.
When there is humanitarian or human crisis or human rights violations, and when, if it's not convenient to them, we don't even touch it. The mass media doesn't touch it. There's no attention. It's also worth noting that this is the second incident in weeks. Lawyers have been concerned about this, because this just means there's a new behavior of Border Patrol, right? Because of the Trump administration, they're obviously there's been an escalation of agents. There are going to be more agents on the border, right? More apprehensions. So if you want to stay in touch about what's happening, no more deaths, you can go to their Facebook page. They are already circulating an online petition through their website, through a website called actionnetwork.org. And in that petition, they have their statement, of course, of what happened, and they have some demands, which are, demanding Border Patrol and other government agencies end these policies and practices that and that they put an end to migrant and refugees' deaths at the border. Another demand is asserting the rights migrants have to receive life-saving humanitarian aid while going through the desert, and also demanding Border Patrol cease interference with all humanitarian aid efforts, like they just did. So we're going to continue here following No Más Muertes and any calls to actions they do to the community for support. So I think that's it for today.
That's it for today. Thank you for joining us, and tune in a few weeks and share with your friends. We'll see you in a couple of Tuesdays.
Follow us on YouTube.